Good afternoon. We would like to start thanking you all for coming. And we also want to thank the UN delegation for being here today and taking time off their busy schedules to talk to us. We are very honored to have this as the first official event of the Laboratory of International Analysis. So that's it. I'm going to pass to Barry.
Good afternoon, everyone. We really appreciate you here. It's an honor to have lots of students here from different universities and periods of different courses. It's great that we have lots of students interested in participate in UN process for working there, and we have here Mr. Maurizio Giuliano, the director of UNIC. That is the Secretariat of United Nations from Rio de Janeiro. And we have here Mr. Benjamin Salignat, the representative of United Nations Talent Outreach. So we really appreciate your presence here, and you can start and be comfortable to take any notes and talk about everything you want. Thank you so much.
After the event, we are going to be here to speak a little more about the laboratory. So if you want to hear and know how to participate and more activities, you are welcome to join us. And we'll have also a coffee break after the event. Thank you. You can start.
Bom dia. Bom, eu trabalho aqui no Brasil, então vou falar em português, né? É o meu mandato, parte dos meus termos de referência. Então, bom dia, eu sou Maurício Giuliano, o diretor do UNICRIO. O UNICRIO é o Centro de Informação das Nações Unidas no Rio de Janeiro. Nós somos responsáveis por todo o Brasil, mas por razões óbvias, infelizmente, não temos a mesma relação com as universidades aqui em São Paulo, no resto do Brasil, que podemos ter no Rio de Janeiro, né? Então, da mesma forma que eu, quase cada semana, tenho eventos junto com as grandes universidades do Rio, é excelente aqui poder estar interatuando com vocês, né? Que são de diferentes universidades, eu entendo. Nós temos o mandato como UNICRIO de dar a conhecer às populações brasileiras o mandato, as mensagens, preocupações, o trabalho das Nações Unidas dentro e, sobretudo, fora do Brasil. E estamos no Brasil a partir de 1948. É sempre um prazer ver jovens, porque na ONU muitas das coisas que nós fazemos são realmente para gerações futuras. Pensamos, por exemplo, no meio ambiente. Nosso trabalho para o meio ambiente não é para nós hoje, não é para o presente, é sobretudo para o futuro. Vocês, os seus filhos, dos seus filhos, né? Portanto, é importante para nós sempre ouvir os jovens, falar com os jovens. E no contexto da carreira, isso se aplica também. É importante ter jovens interessados em trabalhar nas Nações Unidas. E por isso que temos aqui o Benjamin Salignat, meu colega de Nova York, que vai fazer essa apresentação para motivar, encorajar vocês a considerarem uma carreira na ONU. Obrigado.
Muito obrigado, Maurício. Bom dia a todos. Vou tentar me introduzir em português também. Meu nome é Benjamin Salignat. Sou originalmente da França, mas agora moro em Nova York. E trabalho na sede das Nações Unidas, dentro do Departamento dos Recursos Humanos. Vocês gostam do meu português? Sim. Wow. So now I'll continue in English then. I did my best. I hope you enjoyed it. But the rest of the presentation will be in English. All right. So I work in the Talent Outreach Unit in the Office of Human Resources in New York in the United Nations Secretariat. I'm really happy to be here, also because we want to make sure that every one of you knows that the UN is for everyone. It's not only for elite, it's not only for high in the sky kind of people, it's for everyone, and it's important that you know that. So My goal today is to show you the different opportunities that you may have to join the UN. I will start also by, and I'm sure you know a lot of things about the UN, by a little quiz. Do you know this logo? UNICEF, very good. It was an easy start. Very good. International Labour Organization, ILO. It's the oldest international organization from the UN, and we celebrated the 100th anniversary this year. It was a month ago in Geneva. It's not FAO. We have 3 agricultural organizations. This one is not FAO, but good try. It's the emergency side of agriculture. So it's called WFP, the World Food Program. And they help 80 million people every year and making sure that they fight hunger around the world. WHO, yeah, World Health Organization. UNAIDS, it's a sub-entity of WHO. Yeah, I know, it's the hardest one. I'm sure you will want to apply to it. The headquarters are in Madrid, España, so I'm sure you'll like it. It's the UN World Tourism Organization. Yes. You didn't know about it, but it's ONU Mujeres, UN Women. Yes. And we have many more. We have a lot of different organizations. Yeah, so if you really think of something really particular, I'm sure you can find it. This is the official chart. We have 6 principal organs in the UN. At the top, in green, you have the General Assembly. So the General Assembly works as a parliament. We have 193 member states. Each member state has a voice, has a vote in the General Assembly to vote resolution that will set the direction of what the United Nations should do. I work in UN Secretariat at the bottom, the green part, the yellow part. UN Secretariat is the executive power of the UN, so we're here to implement all the different decisions that the General Assembly told us to do. You see at the top some, I don't know if you can see it, but there are some agencies, funds, and programs. So they report to the General Assembly, they monitor and evaluate their work, and they report to the General Assembly. In the UN Secretariat, it's directly the different departments and offices. And in the blue part, you have different specialized agencies. In those, you have ILO, you have the World Bank. They have more freedom. Agencies, funds, and programs, and specialized bodies. They have more freedom in their mandate. They raise money from voluntary contributions from the member states, but also from different donations, individual donations. The money that comes to the UN Secretariat is only through member states. So we have strict guidelines on how to use it. But what is it to work for the UN? Well, it's about serving the world, definitely. Serving the world, and as you can see in the picture, this is Brazilian soldiers in Haiti after the earthquake, helping the populations that suffered from that natural disaster. So, working in the United Nations, this is about serving the world. This is Ken Payumo, who is one of my colleagues in New York. Ken has worked in South Sudan. South Sudan is a young country, relatively to others. It started in 2011 when they separated from Sudan. And since then, they've been in a civil war. Ken was in Bor, it's a remote city in South Sudan. And he was there when the civil war burst. And he will tell us what happened there and how he reacted. So it's just a 5-minute video.
South Sudan descends into civil war. Can anyone protect these civilians?
It's not connected to the speaker.
In his own words.
Didn't work.
Civilians around the area were in the crossfire fighting, and there was no place for them really to go other than our compound.
South Sudan descends. South Sudan descends into civil war. Can anyone protect the fleeing civilians? Ken Payuma's story in his own words.
The civilians around the area were in the crossfire fighting, and there was no place for them really to go other than our compound.
Sorry for this.
South Sudan descends into civil war. Can anyone protect the fleeing civilians? Ken Payuma's story in his own words.
The civilians around the area were in the crossfire fighting, and there was no place for them really to go other than our compound. People just streaming in. We couldn't control the amount, and of course you couldn't say no to people seeking shelter and help and protection. We didn't ask anybody, are you pro-government or anti-government, so it didn't matter, and we didn't know. We were just there to protect whoever showed up in our gate. The government took over Boertown from the armed groups. They incurred a lot of losses themselves, and but by the time they got to Boer, temperatures were very high, and they were very angry. I'm sure they were also in a state of shock. A senior government official had landed in the airfield. I greeted the senior government official, and he asked me, are those people in your compound pro or anti-government? And I said, sir, we don't distinguish. We just help whoever shows up. And I said, well, I want to visit later. I thought that was a great idea. I was more than willing to support any way I could. Made the arrangements. But he arrived in the afternoon with at least 80 armed soldiers. And when they came to the gate, it was clear that the intentions were not good.
You can go with anybody that's unarmed and not even.
If you don't solve them, you will answer. You don't answer, you will answer.
wanted to make their way past me into the compound, I immediately said, you can't come in with your weapons, you can't come in with the uniforms, and you can't come in with your cameras because of respect for the internally displaced persons. And they refused. This is our country, our government. You don't tell us where to go. And that's when soldiers started to push past me, and that's when I ordered the gates of the compound closed. It was difficult. Hearing the gates close was probably the loudest sound I've ever heard. I found myself on the other side with the military liaison officer and other civilian staff, and that was it. That's when the soldiers had to cock their rifles at me and still insisted to come in. And that's when I really just kept saying no. We had all these people depending on us, depending on the UN inside the compound. Thousands of them. This was their last refuge. There was nowhere else. I mean, this point was not negotiable. At minimum, they would have shot whoever they thought could have been anti-government. They would have perhaps taken people out and arrested them. There's a multitude of things that happened, and none of them were good. I really think about it so much before, but afterwards I had time to reflect. I pretty much said goodbye to everything. I didn't know what was going to happen. Just had to make an internal decision what was important, and right then and there, thousands of people that we were protecting was the most important thing. Then it was back and forth for I couldn't even tell you how long. It could have been a minute, it could have been an hour, but it felt like a long time. After they saw that we weren't budging, somehow they got less emboldened. I can't say when the pivot time was, when things turned around, but they just, at some stage, started to get into their vehicles and leave. And that was almost the opposite of what I thought was going to happen next. And but I'm grateful that that's the way it ended.
Okay, so I think it kind of set the tone a little bit of what the work of the UN is, and partly in the field. I don't say that these situations happen every day, but they're not that exceptional either. So yes, it's the kind of work you may do if you go to the field as well. Second topic is Brasileiros na ONU. Here, it's a nice picture as well. It's a Brazilian contingent in Haiti, in the peacekeeping mission that is called MINUSTA. The commitment of Brazil to MINUSTA has been for more than 13 years. So this is essential to have the support of Brazil in this mission and in the different peacekeeping mission in general. Being on the ground, we have a medical officer on the left taking care of a kid and two other military officers on the right. This is about protecting civilians. This is about taking care of the population. You are sent as a military, but your work, your mandate is to protect the population. And that's really the core of your work there. There are some historical links between the UN and Brazil, and those links are really important. This is a picture of the General Assembly building in the UN headquarters in New York. And those lines, if you like architecture, looks like Oscar Niemeyer's lines. And this is Oscar Niemeyer's hand, definitely. Oscar Niemeyer was one of the 12 architects chosen to work in the team who designed the buildings of the UN headquarters. This is a painting. Okay, we don't have the color, but this is a painting, and I don't know if you see the person at the bottom right of the painting. It gives you an idea of the size of the painting. This is a Brazilian artist, Candido Portinari, and he gave 2 paintings to the UN headquarters. There's a kind of tradition that member states give gifts, usually pieces of art, to the UN, and this is the gift that Brazil made in 1953. And the painting is in the General Assembly Hall in the big building. I'm kind of happy, if you see the size, 10 by 15 meters, that it's there, because it wouldn't fit in my living room, so I'm happy that it's there. Other links, of course. This year is the International Year of Indigenous Languages. So we celebrate all the indigenous languages at the UN all the year long. We have this Indigenous People Committee coming to the UN headquarters every year as well. And of course, Brazil is definitely linked to this. Who could have thought that you would see a picture of Ronaldinho in a UN presentation? Yeah? I hope I surprised you. So those are goodwill ambassadors. We use the fame of celebrities to get our voice heard outside of the UN. And Ronaldinho is an ambassador for a program called Sport for Peace and Development. Then on the right, you have Giselle Bundchen. She's the goodwill ambassador for UN Environment. And Daniela Mercuri, she's a UN Equality Champion, fighting for LGBT rights. And that's us, the United Nations Secretariat. We have been established in 1945 with the UN Charter in San Francisco. And among our work, we have 3 main pillars. Of course, the one we know, and through the pictures that I show, the first one is peace and security, that is symbolized by these blue helmets. Security Council decides that we need to send blue helmets in a particular country to make sure that civilians are protected. And then member states contribute by sending troops under the banner of the UN. So the UN Secretariat is responsible to ensure peace and security in the world. Another pillar on the right is human rights. We have the Human Rights Commission, and we have the Human Rights Commission making reports on the situation of human rights in the world. We have also what we call OHCHR. This is also a tradition to love acronyms in the UN, so I hope you'll enjoy it too. This is the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. The current executive secretary is Michelle Bachelet. And they are working on human rights and on situations, monitoring situations of human rights everywhere. The last one is development. And more than ever, with the whole reform of the development system, UN Secretariat is involved in the development. Just a few figures. 37,000 civilians work for the UN, and almost 90,000 uniformed personnel. But most of all, what we see is a big change in what is the UN Secretariat. It's very different from what it was in 1945. A political forum where nations could discuss and make sure that they understand each other. More than that, today, it's definitely a field-based organization. Half of our staff are based in the field, doing groundwork. So we are looking more than ever people who can help us achieving our mandates on the field. This is where we are based. Those are the peacekeeping operations. At the top, you have the different UN headquarters, New York, Geneva, Nairobi, and Vienna. You have different headquarters of different UN organizations there. And at the bottom, you have 4 of the 5 regional economic commissions, depending on the region. Santiago de Chile is the one for Latin America and Caribbean. Those are the special political missions. And the difference between special political missions and peacekeeping operation is that for peacekeeping operation, when we intervene, when the UN intervenes, it's too late. There is a conflict already, there is war, and we send blue helmets to bring peace as fast as possible and bring all the parties back to the table to find a peaceful resolution. Special political missions, we usually send envoys and civilian staff directly in the country to make sure that we don't go as far as the conflict. We do peace building, we do prevention, and we make sure that we stay with all the different parties around the table. I know you know them. They are colorful, they are beautiful. They are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Maybe the most ambitious program that the world has ever had. We are facing global challenges bigger than any before. So we need the UN, we need all the UN entities, and we need anyone to stick to these ambitious goals. And why do we need it? Well, more than ever, as I say, we have global challenges, and no one, no country alone can achieve them, definitely. The challenges we see here can be a little bit far from you sometimes. But let's look at water scarcity, for example, the third bullet point. I think Brazil has a lot of water, and I think you had a feeling that Brazil would never lack water in its history. And thus, I think you are also well placed to know that a few years before in Sao Paulo, you had this water scarcity. So the world is evolving, it's moving, and it's not moving in the right direction. So we need everyone to be with us to make sure that we are solving those global issues. So that's the big question now. Who are we looking for? Well, potentially everyone, potentially you. We want a diverse workforce. We want men and women. We want gender equality at all levels and in every UN organization. We want people who embrace the values of the organization. I will mention them in a few minutes. We want to be as inclusive as possible. Anyone is welcome because anyone has a potential to fulfill. But we want also multilingual staff. We have the 6 official languages. We have 2 working languages, French and English. So we need to work in the UN Secretariat that you are fluent in one or the other, French or English, to be able to work with us. This is the system-wide strategy on gender parity. I said it's a strong commitment since the new Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, Portuguese, has taken office early 2017. He has made gender parity a strong commitment. Every level of the organization, every entity should have gender parity well before 2030. So we are doing our best to achieve that with concrete goals, concrete targets, and make sure that we have this at all levels. Those numbers are public. We try to be as transparent as possible. You can go on our website, www.un.org/gender, and see those numbers. As you can see at the bottom left, in the field, the difference between field and non-field entities is quite huge. We have only 30% of women in the field. The women are in blue. So we still have some work to do, but we are working on it. We have achieved gender parity, at least more women than men at the bottom of the professional grades, and we are achieving this as well at the top level. But we still have a lot of work to do for middle management positions. Those are the 3 core values I mentioned. We need people who embrace our values. They are really important for us. They are really important because, take the first one, integrity. The first day in the UN, you are asked to sign an oath of office. You sign an oath. I don't know how many jobs in the private sector requires you to sign an oath. I don't think many. So I think it's a little bit more than just working for a random private sector company than working for the UN. This is a strong commitment for your professional life, but for your life in general. This oath of office says that you cannot accept any advice, materials from any third party, and you will always seek the best interest of the organization. And I think that's a strong commitment to make, and you will live with this all the time. The second one is professionalism. This is basically the technical aspect of your job. I work in HR, so I try to be always on top of my subject matter. The third one is as important as the 2 others. Respect for diversity. 193 member states, 180 nationalities. Just imagine, we have all religious backgrounds, all skin colors, all genders. We are all different, but we are all working together in the respect of each other to make sure that we achieve our mandates. So we want to make sure that our work environment is a safe space for anyone. Those are the core competencies. I will not mention them too much now because this is useful when you apply to the UN and when you are invited to the interviews, but I'll mention that a bit later. And just to give you an idea, I know we are in the International Relations Institute here, and usually we think of the UN as only staff of political sciences and international relations. This is not true. This is not true because the UN has evolved and we are now in every single job family. I studied human resources, I studied management, I work for the UN. We need engineers, we need auditors, we need finance officers, we need all the different job families that you see. So it's not only for international relations, but it's for every single job family. We don't outsource anything, almost. We have our own firefighters in the UN headquarters. We have our own post office, we have postmen. So yes, we do everything ourselves, so we need every single job family. Okay, there are some benefits to work for the organization. We have a family-friendly environment as much as possible. We try to be flexible in our work environment. We have a recent policy, for example, that allow our staff to work up to 3 days per week from home. We really try to empower our staff to deliver the mandate. We have family-friendly policies in the sense also that we have parental leave, we have home leave. Home leave means every 2 years you are asked to go back to your own country to spend some time with your family and your community to keep that link with the community. We have education grant, we have pension fund, so we have competitive salaries also to attract the best of the talent. If you work for us, we want a diverse and mobile workforce. So it's also a good way to travel. And at the bottom right, you see a concept here called Ikigai. I don't know if some of you know. This is a Japanese concept. This is the path for a happy life. Why? Because in this concept, it considers that if you do what you love, if you do what you're good at, if you do what you can be paid for, and if you do, I forgot the last one, if you do what the world needs, then it will be your ikigai. This is personal, but I do think that I found my ikigai. I have found exactly the center of those 4 cycles to be my work in the UN. Those are the entry points. There are multiple. I don't know any 2 colleagues with the same career. I don't know two colleagues with the same entry points maybe. We have multiple ways of joining the organization. Here we divided it in between internationally recruited, locally recruited, and other entry points. The regular vacancies, I'll mention that at the end. The regular vacancies, we usually recruit experts with several years of experience in a specific field. So maybe as students, may not be the right way to enter, but we have other paths for you. I would like to explain that. I don't know if you have heard of it. This is the Young Professionals Program. This is a kind of famous program and one of the entry points for Brazilians. Why? Because the Young Professional exam happens every year, and we decide what would be the exam areas, depending on the needs of the organization. This year exam is Economic Affairs and Information Systems and Technology, IT. The eligibility criteria, well, if you're Brazilian, you got one already. Participating member, we select only the underrepresented countries in the UN to make sure that they have a better representation for their nationals. Second one is to be under 32 years old. Third one, to have at least a 3-year degree, bachelor. And the fourth one is to be fluent in French or English, because you need to take the exam in one or the other language. So if you have those criteria, you are eligible to apply. Maybe you don't study economic affairs or IT, but maybe you do know other people who do, so please spread the word. This is a timeline, and we are on perfect timing because we just opened the application period, June, July, and we're just in the middle of it. We have a YouTube channel, UN Carriers, you can have a look there. 2 videos in French and English explaining the process of the YPP, Young Professionals Program. And next week we'll have the Portuguese subtitles. This is one of the former successful candidates, Marcelo Lafleur, who passed the exam in 2003. He has kind of international background, and it may seem a little bit impressive because it's truly an international background. But a lot of candidates from Brazil have studied in Brazil and then passed the YPP. Marcelo, when I told him, oh, I'm going to Brazil, I will meet some students, and I hope they will be happy about joining the organization, and say, yeah, let me talk to them a little bit. Can you read? So that was Marcelo. We have many other successful candidates. One of them, second from the top left, is called Lydia. Lydia is also a candidate from Brazil. She's done many things as well. But when I told Lydia that I was about to come here, she mentioned the concepts that I didn't get right away, but maybe you will. She mentioned the word concurseiros. So I know what she means. I understand what she means. And she said, well, we know how to pass competitive exam. We are well prepared for them. So they should definitely try the YPP. There is something as well that she wanted to say. She said, but sometimes we want to study a lot of materials. We want to show our knowledge to the markers and be really to shine in front of the markers. She says for the UN exam, it's important that you stick to the materials, to stick to all the bibliography that is given to you on the YPP website. So study only onto those materials and make sure that you know everything, then you can take the exam. I know, for example, that for the foreign service exam, you need to study a lot. This is less than that. So you know how to study. This is definitely a great opportunity for you. And this is another successful candidate, Striskova. And she wanted to talk about transparency because she said, yeah, sometimes we think there's no way I can get in the UN. I don't know anybody there. I don't know anybody who could help me getting a job there. But again, YPP is maybe the most transparent exam that exists in the world. It's a long exam. We take up to 1 year to select the right candidates. We mark anonymously the copies several times to make sure that we don't miss any good applicants. And if I'm here to talk to you as well, it's to talk 2 minutes about my personal experience. I'm from France, as I said at the beginning. I'm from the countryside. I'm from the rural France, not the fancy Paris. And I have studied in, both of my parents, they don't have a high school degree. They didn't study. I was the first one in my family to study. One of my grandfather is a farmer. The other one is a worker in a factory. I was the first one to study. I took a loan to study. I worked. And in a university far less renowned and famous than yours. But when I studied, I knew I wanted an international career. And I knew that right away after my graduation, my profile wouldn't be that interesting for the UN. So I decided to have a kind of path to work on my profile. So first, my master's degree at the time was only in English. It was an English-speaking program. So I really wanted to master English. It was important for me. I continued to learn Spanish as well because I studied in high school. And I decided to go in an exchange program in Moscow, in Russia. Well, I think I was the only French person who wanted to go to Russia at the time. My other comrades, they went to Mexico, they went to beautiful places where it's warm all year long. I was in Moscow during the winter. It was hard, minus 40 degrees. But it was really interesting because at the end I learned Russian. And when I graduated, then I went to Senegal, to Dakar in West Africa. I went there because we had, and I will mention that, kind of volunteer program for private sector companies. And I was hired to go to Senegal, to Dakar, for a French bank. And I had a 2-year contract there. I thought, yeah, it's a good opportunity. It's a developing country, I'll see something else, different. I worked for 2 years there, and the last week of my contract, I met my wife. Well, I didn't know it would be my wife at the time, but it happened that she is my wife still. So I decided to stay a bit more. So I found a local job as a teacher, another local job as a consultant. And after that, I went back to southeast of France to work in a small international organization, but still an international organization in a multicultural environment where you work in English. And after a year and a half there, and after hundreds of unsuccessful applications to the UN, I finally got an interview, and I finally got selected to join the UN. What I want to say with my story is just that I didn't know anybody in the UN. I didn't know anybody, but I knew that I wanted an international career in an international organization. So what I did is I had a path, and I decided to work on my profile because that was the most important for me at the time. So I learned new languages, I did different jobs in my area, which was human resources, and I went abroad, I went to Moscow, I went to Senegal to make sure that I'm in a different work environment. So that's my tip for you, and I will repeat it throughout the presentation. Another program, so we saw the Young Professionals Program, YPP. It's just an exam. This is one of the entry, but not the only one. Another one for you, if you speak several languages, is called the LCE, Language Competitive Examination. If you speak 2 of the 6 official languages, you may qualify for this exam for interpreters, translators, proofreaders, etc. Another program is the internship program. Internship program is a learning opportunity to get to know the UN. This is the only unpaid opportunity in the UN. And I understand that this can be a lot of effort for students. To be honest, at the time when I was a student, I couldn't afford it, but this is a fact. We don't pay our interns. Some organizations now start paying them. UNICEF is one of them. IOM is another one. So you may look at their websites to find those opportunities. Another entry point is consultants and individual contractors. This one is interesting because sometimes it's home-based and sometimes it's part-time, meaning that you may work only maybe a few days per month. And it's a good way to have a first foot in the organization and see how we work. UN volunteers. Who has heard about UN volunteers? Yeah, a few people. Cool. UN volunteers, it's a special entity in the UN because they work for the other entities. They don't have their own program. They hire young professionals to work for other agencies. And I understand that in Brazil, the concept of intern and volunteer can be the other way around. We don't pay our interns, but we do pay our volunteers. Yes, this is confusing. So that's why we need more Brazilians at the UN, so we don't misinterpret what you do. UN volunteers, we have two different programs. As a young person under 29, you can be a youth UNV. Just need a high school degree and no experience. We don't have a lot of those opportunities, to be honest, but this could be an entry point. But what we look for, and we have a lot of those opportunities, are specialists UNV. People who are more than 25 years old with at least 2 years of experience. When we say 2 years of experience, it's not only work experience, it's any kind of experience. What I mean is, we do count internship, for example, as an experience. We do count voluntary work as experience. If you work virtually with an ONG here, with local communities, we do value it. We really want doers. We want people who can roll up the sleeves and do the work on the ground. So that's the kind of people we are looking for. People who can show us their motivation in helping others. And this is an interesting program. Because if you see the numbers, we have up to 8,000 volunteers every year. The interesting part as well, as I said, is we do pay our volunteers. Depending on the duty station, depending on where you are, depending on danger, etc., I would say between $2,000 and $3,000. Another interesting point, I mentioned the field missions, so special political missions and peacekeeping operations. Up to 25% of all the staff in those field missions are UNV. So this is a strong entry point. And I've discussed with many Brazilians, a lot of them. They told me, yes, I'm a former UNV. That's the way I got into the organization. I worked in the field. And after that, I got a regular post in another entity. So that's definitely a really important way of getting into the organization, a really efficient way. I was discussing with my colleague from UNV in Brasilia earlier this week, and they have currently opportunities in Brazil, in Mato Grosso, Salvador, and Brasilia. They're looking for people with a legal background, who studied law, to work on the digitalization of the justice system in Brazil. So if you go to unv.org and you look for the different opportunities, you'll see those in Portuguese. So if you have studied law or you know other people who've studied law, this is a great opportunity for them. Careers at UNICEF, you all know the organization. They have also programs for young professionals. All the info is on unicef.org, really interesting. Maybe another entity that you may not know, UNFPA, working essentially with youth, women and young girls. You see their mandate. They work a lot on pregnancies, safe pregnancies for women, female genital mutilation, early marriage. They fight against all of this. And if as a young person, you haven't found yet something that is interesting for you, those two opportunities are here to get you involved. This is more a brainstorming than a real work, but it's an interesting way of getting in touch with the UN and to see how we work. The first one is called Summer of Solutions. We have this platform called Unite Ideas, where we seek the help of other people outside of the UN to solve our global issues. And the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth has created Summer of Solutions to have more young people involved in this. The second one is called onlinevolunteering.org. And you can be involved on different projects online. You could do some translation in Portuguese, for example. You could do some revision of documents. And you would have a taste of what we do and how we work. So that could be also just a few hours a month or every 2 months just to spend on this. Okay, that was the big first part. I'm sorry I talk a lot. The second part, depending on where you are in your career and your experience, may not be relevant right now, but it's just for you to keep in mind. We have a regular recruitment process. Regular vacancies that we call job openings. Those vacancies are available for the UN Secretariat on careers.un.org. This is for UN Secretariat. UN Secretariat is the biggest entity, 37,000 civilians everywhere in the world. So we have a lot of opportunities there. But if you haven't found what you were looking for on our website, please go onto the other UN entities' websites, because we have a lot more opportunities there. UNICEF, UNDP, UNFPA, ILOs, you name it, you will find other opportunities. So We try to be as harmonized as possible, but we haven't found a solution yet on how to appear as harmonized in talent management. So we have a different website. It takes time to create your profile, but once it's done, then it's easier to apply. This is the regular way of looking for a job. You select your job family, category, etc. And this is how a search appear. You have different, each line is a different opportunity. It's called job opening. I'd like just to take 2 minutes to discuss how it's made. So we have the posting title, which is really important, so you know exactly what you're applying for. The first paragraph is called organizational setting and reporting. Basically, where you will be based, what will be your units, and to whom you will report. Second part, responsibilities. Well, it's a regular job description, just to tell you what you will do if you are selected on this job. Then comes the competencies. I mentioned them earlier. Competencies are there because we want to assess those competencies when we reach the interview stage. And then we have 3 criteria that are really important. They are eliminatory: work experience, education, and languages. Education, the minimum requirement for professional positions in the UN Secretariat, is a 3-year degree. It's the bare minimum. We encourage also staff to have a master's degree when possible, but the bare minimum is a bachelor. Work experience has 2 aspects: requirements and desirables. So required experience is really important because if you don't have that experience, don't lose your time to apply. This would be you'll lose your time to apply. However, desirable experience, if you don't have it, this is fine. This is the ideal profile of the kind of candidate we're looking for. If you don't have it, you can still apply, and please apply. The last part are languages. Languages, here, it's English, required fluency. For this post, it's fluency in English. For others, will be maybe fluency in French or another language. It doesn't always require English as fluency. But when it does, please make sure when you complete your profile that you put fluent in the 4 categories of understanding, reading, writing, and speaking. If you don't put fluent in those 4 categories and we require fluency, you will be directly screened out. The system will screen you out. So it's important to put fluent in all those 4 categories. And don't be too humble. I know sometimes you say, well, I may be fluent in 3 categories, but when I speak, I don't sound fluent. Don't be too humble. If you can understand me today, talking to you, it's fine. We're not looking for English literature teachers. We will not give you a test on Shakespeare to analyze. It's fine. This is the downside of having one language when we're a global organization. We want to make sure that you can understand correctly the language. We want to make sure that you can express yourself correctly. But that's it. There won't be a grammar test at the end. Same for French. I know a lot of Brazilians who are really good at French. I'm sure there is a lot of those people in the room. So please don't be too humble. If you can speak and understand correctly, put fluent. Then the assessment. Usually it's a written assessment, the format and the test, essay to write, and then the interview. Then you have this paragraph on how the post is funded and how long. Then you have the United Nations considerations. It's the legal statements. You can read them all the time if you want, but once you've done it, yeah, that's fine. And the last one is no fee. Why it's important? Because if someone you don't know sends you an email saying you've been considered for a position in the UN. But first, please send me 400 reais just to make sure we're on the right side. This is wrong. This is false and this is a scam, so don't believe it. We will never require you to pay for anything. Okay? So just quickly, normal information that we will ask you to fill. This is kind of classic. And the most important part, well, after your name, because I need you to spell your name correctly, but the employment history. Please take the time to fill that part thoroughly. This is how you may shine to the recruiter. Take the time to do it. Take the time to look back at what you've done, because this is how we want you to help us helping you. In the sense that in the private sector in Brazil, if I'm an HR person and I apply and I put in my resume, I'm in charge of recruitment. Well, the other recruiter, well, he knows or she knows what I mean. We all do recruitment same way in Brazil. We have all the same cultural background. But we are the UN, 180 nationalities. So the way we recruit in Brazil will be different than in Burundi or Korea or France. So it's important that you put as many details as possible. We really need to understand what you did. So that's why having 5, 6, 10 pages of your personal history profile, as we call it, PHP, is normal. We really need to understand what you do. This is an example. This is another one for project officer. Use action verbs and tell us exactly what you did. You don't really know how to do that? Go to careers.un.org, look for similar jobs that you would like to do, and see how we wrote it. So that could inspire you on how to write. Cover letter, also an important part, but the employment history is even more important. So do it correctly. Be careful of spelling mistakes, but the most important is the employment part. But take the time to do them thoroughly. Maybe you start, you come back, you start, you stop after a few days, and you come back and you redo it. Where you can find information on the manuals for all the different questions you may have, and on the technical aspect, you can contact us and the technical team. Then the evaluation part. 2 different concepts, eligibility, suitability. Eligibility is the basic requirement, and it means that the computer will screen your CV to make sure you have the basic requirements. The computer know if you have or not at least a 3-year degree. The computer will know if you have put fluent in the 4 categories, for example. That's the eligibility. But once you've passed it, there comes the suitability part. And there's a human who will read your resume. And that human is the only one who knows if you have the exact work experience that we're looking for. This is more specific, technical, so a human will read it, so that's the suitability part. The assessment, as I say, are usually under the format of a question, and you need to write an essay. That's a written assessment. We have also MCQs and also different sorts of questionnaires. If you're suitable, if you're eligible, then suitable, then you will be invited to an assessment, a written assessment. If you pass the written assessment, you go to the interview. In the UN, we use the competency-based interview. It may not be the most common way of interviewing in Brazil or in France, for example, but it's a really interesting one to know. Why? Because it's also called behavioral interview. We think that past performance is the best predictor of future performance. So we think that if you've done something really well in the past, chances are that you will do it again in the future. This way, we don't require you to have done the job already. Instead, we will look back at what you've done, maybe in academic situations or in an internship or in a voluntary work, and make sure that we see the right patterns in the competencies we want to evaluate. It's not clear, it's okay. We have 2 tips for you. You need to prepare and you need to practice. You need to prepare, so it means you have 3 competencies in the job opening. In front of each of them, you will think of how did I demonstrate that competency in my past. So you go for each competency and you write down potential examples on how you demonstrated it. And then you practice. You need to give us good examples that show that. The structure of your answer will be under what we call CAR. Context, actions, results, learning. Context, easy one. Oh yeah, I remember I have a good example about that competency of communication. I used to work in Senegal, in Dakar, in this private sector company where I was asked to do this. Context. Action. In order to achieve this and this, I decided that I could talk to those people, convince them to do this, and then I convened for another meeting. I decided to do this. I explained all my actions to achieve my goal. Results. Explain exactly how it went and what were your results. And the last one, the learning part. Learning part is, oh yes, we did that. We had a fantastic result. But now, thinking back, maybe you should have done this and that. Lessons learned. Some do's. Some do's would be concise. You have a good example. Let's say for 3 competencies, we take 45 minutes, so 15 minutes per competency. You have a good example, take 5 to 10 minutes to explain your example, and then you have some questions and answers. So try to be concise in the way you expose your example. The don'ts. We want to know what you did as an individual. Understand that some cultural backgrounds would put more emphasis on we as a team, a community. We want to know what you as an individual did. So it's really important to stick to it. Examples, communication. For each competency, we have different criteria, different aspects. So if you see here, we are not looking for people who could do a stand-up in front of 4,000 people. This doesn't make sense. No, we want people who could listen to others. We want people who could clarify what they say. We want people who could have two-way communication. Those are the aspects that we put in the competency of communication. The kind of questions we can ask is at the bottom, classical ones, but again, you need to provide a concrete example. Don't say, oh yeah, I usually do this and I usually do that. We all usually do things well, but do I have proofs that support my patterns? Another one about planning and organizing, same idea, but at the bottom, if you see the question, it's a negative one. And this is fine to provide examples that didn't go well. Why? Because we don't want you to tell us that everything you did was a success. We won't believe you. We all fail, all the time. But we want to know how you failed. Did you fail dramatically? Did you fail beautifully? And how you reacted to it. Selection decision. Once you pass the interview, then the manager will make a decision on which candidate who passed the interview is selected. The important point is, if you pass the interview, you will be put on a roster, a talent pool, a roster of successful candidates for that particular job family. It means that if you're put on that roster. Next time you apply to a similar job opening, you may be picked up from that roster, and you won't need to go through the whole assessment process. Two advantages. For us, super quick. From 8 to 9 months, this is usually the timeline we have to recruit people. From 8 to 9 months, only a few weeks. So it's super useful and helpful for us. For you, you increase your chances to be selected. So that's important to know that. Now the resources. I told you, caris.un.org is the main source of information. We have a lot of information. If you have never been there, take the time to go and see. Social media, we're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We post a lot of tips. We have our Tuesday tips every week for candidates, so you can follow them. Resources in Portuguese. We have what we call ONU News, news.un.org/pt, and they have their own Quarta de Empregos where you'll find vacancies. And from the unique Rio, we have nacionesunidas.org, which is really good as well. So you will find a lot of opportunities there, and partly opportunities in Brazil. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your attention. I would love to have questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin Salinet. This was a great presentation. It resolved me a lot of doubts that I had. And now we're opening to some doubts that the public has. And thank you so much for coming again. We don't have a second microphone, so I'm gonna be up. And if you raise your hand, I'm gonna see you and give the microphone to you. I don't know the range of the cable, so if it's out, please help me during this task. So
We will also be delivering Mauricio Juliano cards. He was gentle and gave them to us. If you have any doubts, you can consult him too. And I think that's it.
Yeah, the first question? Yes, go.
Hi Benjamin, thanks for your speech, that was amazing. Different of the most of people here, I'm not student, I'm social worker, and I degree in 2013 in Federal University of Ouro Preto, and I'm trying to make my profile, as you said, for the UN, and I don't know if I miss any information, but for UNV, do I have to go out into this recruitment process, or it's like because I can speak, I have a good listen, but I'm not sure if I'm good enough to do a grammar test. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, you're right. No, I mean you expressed yourself beautifully in English. This is more than enough. You should apply to UNV opportunities. If you're social workers, I mean, as I say, work on your profile. The English is already perfect. I don't know if you work in ONG here. This is another way that you can build your profile. Looking for opportunities abroad is also a good way, so UNV provide them. But there are also great NGOs, ONG, outside of Brazil. So you could also apply to different NGOs who do an amazing work in general in different countries. I mean, the UN is a big, complex structure which has an overview of things, but a lot of the groundwork is done by ONG. And we have, for example, this OCHA, Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. They work every day with the different NGOs on the ground. So there is a strong partnership, a strong collaboration between NGOs and the UN. So working for an NGO is definitely a great path if you also seek a UN career.
Hi. So I have a very specific question. You mentioned this opportunity to work in Mato Grosso, perhaps also Brasilia, as a UN volunteer. That would be an opportunity that suits my profile, as I'm recently graduated in the law school here in São Paulo. It was just not clear to me whether people need to have this 2-year work experience, as you said, and whether, like, if previous internships that I have taken during my graduate studies, if those would count. And I would also like to understand better, like, once I start working for the UN here in my own country, how does that connect to the other steps that I might want to take in this career?
Thank you so much. First, I will not be able to answer the first question. I just added that opportunity because my colleague mentioned that. I don't know all the details of it, but again, unv.org, and you go to opportunities and you'll find this opportunity right away. So just check, it will be written and very clear. So you can have a look. Then internship, yes, it does count. Internship does count when we look at work experience. Myself, I've done, I don't know, in total, more than 1.5 years of internship. And yes, it does count. So it's important to do internship, to get a voluntary work or anything that can give you a link with the work on the ground. So yes, we count it. And the last part is, I cannot tell you today how you will go from being a UN staff member in Brazil to being a UN staff member outside and somewhere else. But I think it's important to take the step one after another. First, you try to get that opportunity to get into the UN in Brazil, to do the work here, local. This will definitely open you other opportunities. Then it's just a matter, do I seize those opportunities or do I not? We are looking for professionals to go on the ground and to do the work. We are looking for people in Mali, we are looking for people in Centrafrique, in DRC, in Congo, or in Afghanistan. We do look for those people there. It's up to you if you will seize those opportunities or not, but one step at a time, you take the opportunity here, then you keep working on your profile, and then you'll find more opportunities afterwards. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for...
Hi, so first of all, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very clarifying for me and I guess a lot of other students. My question is, I don't know if you have those numbers or if you even have the slightest idea, but how hard is it to actually land a job? Because you mentioned 8,000 volunteers a year. So how many do apply for a volunteer's position, for instance? Because if it's like 12,000, it's not that hard, but if it's 12 million, then we get a little discouraged. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question and your nice words. I don't have numbers on UNV, unfortunately, but let's talk about the extremes. The extremes and where we get the biggest number of applications would be in New York and Geneva. Let's say for a political affairs officer requiring 5 to 7 years of experience, we can get more than 1,000 applicants. It's very competitive. And if you don't have exactly the profile they want, well, it's hard to get a job. But then it depends on, for UNV, for example, most of the opportunities are in the field. And in the field, usually field missions are less attractive than headquarters. And then maybe it requires French. Then it reduces the pool of people who can apply. I mean, you have the advantage already of speaking Portuguese. French is not far, come on, you can do it. You can work a little bit on your French. We are looking for French speakers. Half of our peacekeeping and special political missions are in French-speaking countries. So we do look for more of those French speakers to work with local communities. And I promise this will be the most rewarding experience of your life. If we take Centrafrique, for example, you have Bangui, the capital. But we are, of course, in Bangui, but we are in remote places. We are in Cagabandoro. And in Cagabandoro, as a UNV, maybe you'll be 28, 29 years old, and you will basically negotiate with local communities, with armed troops, with rebels at 28 years old. I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity for you in your life, but for your career. Because I promise you that if at that age you are able to do what you do there, well, I don't think you would be afraid of taking any job after that. So it would be a great experience, definitely.
Just to advise you, we have time for just 2 or 3 more questions. So I'm kind of blind, so if you raise your hand like really high, I can.
Hi. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for your speech. It was really inspiring for me as a student. I'm an economics student. I'm 19 years old, so I mean, I guess I still have quite a path of education. And so, in this sense, I'd like to ask you about developing a profile in terms of extracurriculars and MUN models. I'm already trying to speak French. I can assure you, as a Portuguese speaker, it's kind of hard, but we're trying. So I'd like to ask you if this kind of experience that we acquire as graduate students is an important path for developing a profile that would suit the United Nations requirements in the field. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. This is great because you're 19 years old, and so it's a little bit early to apply, to be honest. But it's good to have this in mind because you can work on your profile, as you say. We do like people who show some motivation in helping others because this is our core value. If you can do some volunteer work, this is great. UN models are great to understand how the UN works. So it gives you a better understanding of the work we do and how we work. So you should start now. If you have some voluntary work that you do part-time, we will count it as part-time, but we will count it. So it's important that you know a little bit where you go, and I'm happy that you study economics. You don't need to study international relations or political science to get into the UN. You could go to the World Bank as an economist. You could go to a department called Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA, also in in New York, you could go to one of the regional economic commissions in the five continents. So, yes, build your profile, learn new languages, collaborate with local ONGs, do some voluntary work, show us that you are ready to roll up the sleeves and do the work on the ground. So that's what we like. Thank you.
For the last question, she was raised before.
Hi, Benjamin. Isabella, and I have a question regarding visas. I was wondering if visas are part of the requirement to get an internship or not, because I was looking into an internship in Italy, and as a Brazilian citizen, I would need a visa to stay longer than 6 months, and the position I'm trying to apply is longer than 6 months, so I was wondering that.
Thank you, Isabella, for your question. So my answer is in two parts. Internship, we don't help interns to get a visa. But depending on the country, I mean, you don't need a specific one to be an intern. So you need to see the rules that are in place in that particular country. We can eventually give you a letter that says that you will be an intern in the country. That's what we can do, but we will not request a visa for you as an intern. Then for international recruitments, we do help candidates to get their visa. This is part of our responsibility. When we select somebody as a UNV or select somebody as a professional to take a position somewhere, this is part of our responsibility to get the visa for the person and to go there. We have special agreements with all different countries to make sure that the staff can enter the country. And as a UN staff, we have what we call duties and privileges. This is also part of being an international civil servant. The duties, for example, would be that I'm not allowed to talk about the specific local political situation of a country. I cannot do it. The privileges is you cannot be arrested for the work that you do for the UN. So this is a kind of privileges, and with that comes this visa, so you can do your work on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for your presentation. This was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to meet you and to have you here in the International Relations Institute. I hope you enjoyed. And we now have a coffee break. If you mind, okay, you may eat there and have a little conversation with other colleagues, make new friends from your future UN co-workers. And now I pass the word for Matthews and me. We all take part of the Laboratory of International Analysis, LIE, and we want to talk a little about this organization. And thank you so much for coming.
Hello everyone. Well, as coordinator of the Laboratory of International Analysis and the Institute, I would like to thank you, your presence here, and well, it was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming, and everyone here. And I would like to talk about the LIE for a moment. We are starting new projects now in the Institute, and we will have a lot of projects, and we will be open to new students from USP, not from USP only, and if you're not from USP, you can have the chance yet to come with us. And well, that's it.
Yeah, we're doing research, we're doing events, and I think that's it. We're structuring the laboratory, and we will accept all kinds of inscriptions. I think next semester. Yeah, you can read all about it on our page. I think we will post, and we couldn't deliver the card for everyone, so we will post it on our page so you can have access. I don't know if I can post all of it because it's like Mauricio's card, but you can contact us and say, I was at a speech, I didn't get it, and we can just pass to you a photo and everything. Sorry for the wrong number of cards.
What is the page?
LAI, Laboratório de Análises Internacionais.
Tá no Facebook?
Aham, Facebook.
Tá no ícone dos cartazes, tem ali embaixo.
Sorry. Muito obrigado, gente.